Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have Appia Rare Earths and Uranium Corp. It trades on the OTCQX under APAAF and on the CSE under API. It's in the rare earth element and uranium sectors and is currently focusing on delineating high-grade critical rare earth elements and gallium on the Alces Lake property, as well as exploring for high-grade uranium in the prolific Athabasca Basin on its other side, Loranger, North Wollaston, and Eastside properties. Please welcome its president, Frederick Kozak. Welcome, Frederick.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you and your guests. And let's get right into it because we've got lots to talk about. This slide is from our corporate website. You can also see it and download it there. It's got more slides than I'm actually going to cover today, but so yeah, we're a critical materials company and we're exploring in northern Saskatchewan in Canada for rare earth, critical rare earth elements and uranium as well as gallium. We have the obvious disclaimer. There will be a test on that. No, there won't. Okay, so introducing Appia Rare Earths and Uranium Corp. Northern Saskatchewan, as has already been mentioned, we own 100% of the Alces Lake block, and it's about 88,000 acres, but more importantly, it encompasses about 27 square kilometers of high-grade surface mineralization for rare earths. The rare earth is hosted 100% in monazite, which I'll talk about a little bit, but it's some of the richest occurrences of rare earths and monazite in the world. We've done some metallurgical testing through the Saskatchewan Research Council in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. The metallurgical testing confirms processing potential similar to other producing mines. And at Alces Lake, we've got very high-grade rare earths. We also have some continuous and very thick lower-grade rare earths-bearing zones at and near surface. The uranium is also we're looking near surface, and as previously mentioned, we've got some claims blocks in the Athabasca Basin. So I'm going to talk mostly here about our rare earths that we're working on. We've got two very significant discoveries at Alces Lake. They're called the WRCB and the Maiden Ridge discoveries. They're expected to make up our maiden resource report. The timing of that is obviously subject to change. We just put out a news release this morning with some assay results from last year, and we're looking at hopefully by the end of the year, but industry activity is pretty high. We've been drilling since mid-March. We're already 70% of our planned 20,000 meters of diamond drilling. And we are fully funded. We raised about 15.5 million Canadian dollars last year, and that is going to fully fund our 2022 program. Our goal, as stated here, is our objective to become one of the critical rare earths producers in North America within the next 3 years. So just a little bit of history here for you. Alces Lake, we have, as I mentioned, some very, very high-grade rock. It's in monazite, which is a pretty interesting mineral. Monazite is something that has been processed for many, many years, so it's not something that's new to the world. But focus on this chart here, and that is our high-grade monazite is some of the best in the world. And you can see the red bar, 16 2/3% weight percent monazite. That was from our 2017 to 2020 drilling, and we confirmed that drilling and the grade of it with our 2021 assay results. I've just highlighted some of the holes that we drilled last year. We drilled a total of 100 holes in the Alces Lake project. Most of them were drilled in what we call the WRCB area, which is Wilson, Charles, Richard, and Bell. And each of these are highlighted here, but you can see from last year, we've got consistently high grades highlighted in yellow, and some of the lesser grades I will talk about in a moment, but it's very, very fascinating discovery for rare earths. As I mentioned already, we're about 70% into our drilling program. Last year, we drilled something on the order of about 55 new holes at WRCB. This year, we've drilled a total of 30 holes. But more importantly, we've extended the strike length of the zone of interest by 120 meters, almost to 280 meters. We made a massive new discovery here that I'm going to talk about at Magnet Ridge. It's on a regional trend that's about 1.5 kilometers southeast of the WRCB. We made a shallow, continuous zone discovery at WRCB, which we're calling the AMP zone. And more importantly, Magnet Ridge looks, the rock anyway, looks just like the AMP zone. We're still waiting on assay results to come back on that. But it's longer, 30 meters strike length, 175 meters in width, and has been found down depth to 100 meters. On a drilled basis, it's got something drilled with on the order of 50 to 70 meters, and we've already drilled 34 holes in that, and we've moved over to something that may be a similar anomaly. Now, I'll just touch very briefly on the rare earths. You'll see that in our presentation, we've got a lot more slides, but the rare earth elements are not actually all that rare. They're found in many places in the world, but why are they important now? They're important now because the critical rare earth elements highlighted here in red include neodymium, praseodymium, terbium, and dysprosium, and why those are important is that they are the primary metals that are used to create magnets for electric vehicles, your cell phone, the F-35 fighter jet, Trident nuclear submarines, and that sort of thing. But they are 90% controlled or so from China, and the world has recognized that the critical materials are important because, let's face it, if you're going to grow electric vehicles by fivefold by 2030, you need a lot more magnets. And our rare earths, the critical rare earths, we have a lot more of them in our monazite. And I've mentioned monazite. Why is it important? It has a higher percentage of the critical rare earth elements than do the other forms of rare earth zones, namely bastnasite and some ionic clays. But the monazite itself has been processed for more than 50 years, so it's not a technology that is hard to understand. And you'll see here that in this slide, it just shows what are the rare earth elements used for. They're used for many things, but as I was mentioning before, primarily the world is focused on electric vehicles, wind turbines, magnets. Those are the critical elements that the rare earths are important. And in fact, at the Alces Lake property, we think that 85 or 90% of these critical rare earths are 85 to 90% of the critical rare earths are the value of our discovery. I just put up a slide here that shows since 2017 to today. You can see that rare earth element prices, in particular neodymium, was fairly flat, but it's gone up between 100 and 300% between 2017. And as the world is going to adoption of more and more electric vehicles, currently the world only meets its demand for rare earth elements in terms of supply. So there is, as I mentioned before, there's a potential looking like a potential shortage. So a little bit more about Appia. This is just an example of our capital structure. You can see our 12-month stock chart on the right-hand side. We've got roughly 140 million fully diluted shares outstanding, basic 123 million. We trade, as mentioned, on the CSE and the OTCQX. That is a mistake. Anyway, that slide should have said QX, not QB. I joined Appia about a year and a half ago, and I'm a former equities analyst, and I can tell you with certainty that when it comes to companies, it's always about the management team. Now, Appia management, I won't go through everybody in particular, but we've got over 300 years of combined industry experience. It's a very, very strong geologic team, and Tom Drivas founded the company. He's got over 30 years experience in many industries, including the president and CEO of Romeo's Gold, which he founded back in 1995. So let's get more into it. Mentioned it briefly. I just highlight this very quickly for the fact that Canada and the US in particular have memorandums of understanding to cooperate on critical materials. The government of Canada, the governments of the US have both been making moves in that direction, and I would say in particular in Canada, the Canadian government has committed $3.8 billion Canadian to the rare earth sector, or to the critical material sector. I won't talk about this too much, other than to say we are in northern Saskatchewan primarily, although we do have one asset in Ontario, a legacy uranium asset. But I'm going to focus today, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, on the Alces Lake area. So when we talk about monazite and rare earths, I'm going to run through a bunch of slides very quickly. Some of this is repeated information, but I'll just draw your attention to the picture here at the bottom of the screen. You can see this outline. That's all monazite at surface. So we've got very high grade, as I showed in that slide previous. The composition is 23 to 25% of the critical rare earths. That's where the value is coming from. And in Saskatchewan, it's one of the best mining jurisdictions in Canada and possibly in the world. It keeps getting kudos for that. And very important to Appia is that in Saskatoon, which is in the center of Saskatchewan, we're up in northern Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Research Council is building a monazite processing facility. Now, they're well known because Saskatchewan is well recognized in the world as a uranium jurisdiction, but they're well known for their work in processing and analysis, and the Saskatchewan and Canadian governments have committed to build that facility. It should be up and operating initially next year. I'm going to show you some pictures which are really interesting here because this is not common. When you think of monazite, you do not get these massive intrusions at surface. Typically, you will get something like this next picture on the left, the Dante Zone, which shows finer grained monazite, as opposed to the one on the right, the Dillon Zone, which was a different view of the previous picture. But typically, very small grains, 1 to 3 centimeter lenses, and interestingly enough, our monazite also contains gallium, which is another critical materials. So, but what is really interesting about the WRCB deposit at surface is it is naturally pre-concentrated. So going to the next slide, this just highlights again the mention of the processing facility being built by the Saskatchewan Research Council. The good news is they were running a pilot processing facility for several years before committing to build a full-scale rare earth processing facility. Interestingly enough, they've been doing a lot of work for us. They have already optimized a monazite processing flow sheet and have processed monazite from our Alces Lake. As I mentioned previously, we've done some metallurgical work with them to get that rolling. So it's going to be very interesting and important to us. Now, one of the things that I'll highlight here also is that our high-grade mineralization and some of our lower-grade mineralization is at or very close to surface. What makes this unique is that in terms of extraction, we could potentially do something like, would be more like a quarry, less than an open pit, so very low environmental impact, and we're very focused on having a very small environmental impact. Now, I want to get a little bit into just talking about what we've been doing. This is a zoom in of our Alces Lake project. Our 2022 drilling, we've broken it into 3 separate areas: WRCB, which I mentioned before, Magnet Ridge, which is a new discovery for us this year, and then the Western Anomaly, which was exploration work that we did last year, and we're just going back to drill there now. I'm going to zoom in here very quickly on the WRCB and Magnet Ridge area. You can see that we have drilled a lot of holes since March. This is all 2022. But what is very interesting is this Magnet Ridge discovery. First of all, I'm going to show you just an aerial view, what it looks like in terms of WRCB. And you can see at surface, very close together and very easy to extract. Now, this next is a 3D representation of the Alces Lake WRCB area, and I'll show you 2 things. One is WRCB, the yellow, red, and purple in the top of under the WRCB area. It's a continuous 100 meters of high-grade monazite. It outcrops at surface, as we mentioned previously. You saw some of those pictures, and very, very high grade, very easy to extract. Right across from it is, within a few meters, is what we call item Dante, which is also on surface, is also high grade. But if you can see this AMP zone, the dip of it, it's very interesting because it's 10 meters thick, has been drilled up to 10 meters, and it's a continuous zone at depth. So this is just a cross section. We'll have better cross sections when we get this done, but it's a continuous zone at depth, and you can see how it dips. Very quickly, I want to just talk briefly about Magnet Ridge. We discovered this the old-fashioned way, surface geologic exploration. And the interesting thing here is that it has mineralogy that looks just like the mineralogy from the AMP zone. We got assays back from the 2021 drilling at WRCB that identified the AMP zone for us. And we haven't got much in the way of assays back yet for Magnet Ridge, but more importantly, it looks very similar. And as I mentioned before, 300 meters strike length, 175 meters in width, been penetrated down to 100 meters depth. And you can see in the bottom, very small picture, that purple line is a 70-meter drilled width intersection. This just goes to show a bit of a zoom out in terms of the area, and we've got 27 square kilometers. As I mentioned before, we've been focused on the WRCB Magnet Ridge area. We've just moved to drill over to the Western Anomaly, and we announced some assay results from the 2021 drilling program at the Western Anomaly. I just announced that this morning, as well as an updated drilling update. Interestingly enough, the Western Anomaly was discovered by aerial geophysics. Then we went in and we went to the ground and we started doing good old-fashioned ground geology, found again monazite at surface, which is not typical, but and large clusters of it again. And went in and cut some surface samples and then drilled them. And so the surface assays we issued the news release late last year on that. The good news about the results that we've released this morning is that the drilling assays confirm and are actually better than what we found at surface. So we've got something that's going to be very, very interesting in terms of what's at the Western Anomaly. This is just a summary of the drilling that we have done last year as well as previous, and how it's worked for Appia. Started slowly in 2017, 2018, ramped up the drilling by the end of 2020, almost 5,000 meters. Then last year, we drilled 100 holes, just over 8,000 meters. The focus, obviously, as you can see here, was on WRCB. That's a total of almost 13,000 meters of drilling. This year, we've well eclipsed that. We will drill as I mentioned before, probably 20,000 or so meters. We're already just over 14,000 meters. So we continue to grow our knowledge base. And again, we are targeting a Maiden resource report for the Alces Lake area, which will focus on WRCB and Magnet Ridge primarily. There's also another potential discovery adjacent to Magnet Ridge at what we're calling Magnet Ridge West. And just for the geologists in the crowd, if there are any of you, this is a hole from 2019. It returned just over 16 weight percent total rare earth oxides over 50.5 meters. That's almost a 50-foot thick section. It's phenomenal. And it's just at 8.7 meters hole depth, so just under the surface. And there was 3.7 meters of 49.17 weight percent total rare earth oxide. So getting back to what we were talking about before, and that is the concentration, natural pre-concentration, if you will, of the rare earths at Alces Lake. So I'm just going to summarize. There's a few more slides in our deck, but we won't get into those. I just want to summarize here now to leave some time for questions, a fair amount of time. Alces Lake, so it's a world-class total and critical rare earth oxides. Our 2017 to 2020 program yielded average grades of 16 2/3 weight percent total rare earths, and about 25% of that is the critical rare earth oxides. We also have gallium associated with it. And why are rare earths important? Well, the critical rare earths, neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, and terbium, are used for permanent magnets. And if any of you out there are driving an electric vehicle or thinking about an electric vehicle, you can't drive your car without a permanent magnet. And the beauty of the critical rare earths is the magnetic density, that being very, very small magnets are very, very powerful. Our monazite is coarse-grained, and as you saw in some of those pictures, massive intrusions of it. It makes it easier to process. Our critical rare earths are 100% contained within the monazite. There's no interesting minerals that we have to do different processes to extract the rare earths. And again, our metallurgical testing shows that what we have is just like other producing mines in the world. So it's not, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We will be able to go from rare earths in monazite to metallurgical and beyond. Again, one of the beauties of our property is we are in Saskatchewan, and in the middle of Saskatchewan, in Saskatoon, the Saskatchewan Research Council is building a state-of-the-art rare earths processing facility, and I didn't mention it before, but it is designed to process monazite, and that's a real advantage for us. We've got multiple zones of rare earth discoveries on a very long geologic strike, at least 1.5 kilometers from WRCB down to Magnet Ridge. It's a very large regional fold. Our discoveries are open in all directions, so we haven't got to the end of this in terms of finding what we're exploring for. 27 square kilometers of high-grade monazite mineralization found on surface, and obviously we talked about the rare earth magnet supply. Well, the world needs a source of rare earths to build their magnets to make the electric vehicles and wind turbines. And lastly, I will again mention that our 2022 drilling program is fully funded. We've got, I think one of the slides showed just under 8 million Canadian dollars, and we're well, as I said before, 70% into our program, so we are fully funded. I will stop there and open it for questions.
All right, great job, Frederick. Okay, Chris McKinney asks if you can talk about any majors that are drilling near you, and if you have any joint venture opportunities with them.
In terms of the rare earths, no, there are none. In terms of uranium, this part of northern Saskatchewan, at least on the eastern edge of the Athabasca Basin, is the source of a lot of the major uranium discoveries and mines and processing facilities. To date, we have no joint ventures. We are going Alces Lake alone. It's a 100% owned project.
Great. Lau Casey wants to know, when you say you're fully funded, does that mean that you will not need to raise any future capital before you're cash flow positive? Are you looking for other opportunities?
This year, we are fully funded for our 2022 drilling program. The company has been funded entirely by equity. And in Canada, we have something called flow-through shares. A lot of our work has been funded by flow-through shares. As part of the Canadian government's commitment to critical materials, they've upped the ante. Flow-through shares are a tax advantage. So we are looking. We have funded every year with equity. We would be looking to that again. No, we are not funded to production. Just our drilling program is fully funded this year.
Okay. Mark Ruiz wants to know what the sales margins will be on the Alces Lake project. You mentioned different grades for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of moving parts to figuring that out, but in terms of the extraction process, as we showed you, we are very close and on surface. So that is a very inexpensive extraction. So think of it from a perspective that you don't have to build a full-blown pit. Your operating costs should be very low, as I showed in that one graphic. The rare earth element prices are still strong and have seen tremendous growth over the last few years. We have not got an economic analysis yet on this. That'll be one of the things that comes out of the resource report that we hope to have out hopefully by the end of the year.
Great. Frank Carroll asks, are you in talks with any major brands or household names that you can discuss?
Well, I can't discuss any of that, unfortunately, but as I mentioned in one of our slides, and as shown here on point number 8, the manufacturers around the world are seeking long-term supply chains outside of China. Given that we're going to have a processing facility in Saskatchewan to process our ore, I'm pretty sure that there are lots of people looking at what Appia is doing and the potential for us to become a future supplier to anybody who needs rare earth elements.
H. Strickland wants to know, he's tracking your U.S. listing, but he doesn't see current financials on the OTC markets. Can you go into some details about your assets, liabilities, and the terms of any debt? Mm-hmm.
Well, very, very simply, and by the way, we are listed on the QX now. We have no debt, very simply. We have no debt. We have just, liabilities in terms of accounts payable, but we're current on those at all times. As I mentioned before, we have just under $8 million Canadian of cash on the balance sheet. And it's a very straightforward, balance sheet and income statement. We are in the exploration phase of Alces Lake. We do not have any current revenue. We are purely an exploration company at this point.
Wonderful. Malcolm Garza asks if you can talk about where your current and future production costs have done with accounting for inflation and labor shortages. How's that affected you?
Excuse me, pardon me. Well, we work very closely with our First Nations communities in the Alces Lake area, and we're having good success with having a labor supply for the work that we're doing up there. The interesting thing about this part of northern Saskatchewan is the First Nations members have been working in the uranium mines and processing facilities for years. So there is a ton of very experienced workers, and we're really excited to be looking forward to be working with them as we go from exploration into extraction.
Wonderful.
As far as the inflation goes, well, inflation, I'm not an economist. Let's just leave it for the masters of the universe.
I think that's where we all are. All right. Kim Hansen says, you are QX now, which would lead me to believe that you have ambitions to uplist to Nasdaq. Is that true? And if so, will you keep the Canadian listing or be solely Nasdaq?
Well, we fully recognize the value of upgrading to the QX, and our Canadian listing on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Let's face it, we started there. At this point in time, there haven't been any considerations as to where we would upgrade to, but there are lots of opportunities. And shout out to the OTC and the support that we've been receiving from them, as well as to the Canadian Securities Exchange. We're very happy where we are right now. In the future, well, who knows about the future?
Great. Gerald Ballard asks about your accounting. Is it IFRS or US GAAP? Who's your auditor?
Our accounting is IFRS, yes.
Okay.
And our auditor is I'm sorry, I'd have to pull up their name. I don't have it on my tongue.
Okay. You can look that up and you can respond on your own if you like later. Alan Harrison asks, what are the major milestones we should look for that you think you'll reverse the decline in the stock?
Oh, the stock market, my goodness. Well, we're very excited about what we have been doing and the results that we're getting this year. And I would say that in terms of major milestones looking forward, as I mentioned before, we have the Maiden resource report, what we call in Canada MI 43101. We're hopeful that will be out before the end of the year. We had unfortunately hoped or had thought we would have it out before now, but in terms of the industry has been going flat out and multiple delays in terms of getting data back. In fact, I would mention that we've actually engaged a second assay lab because we're generating so many samples to get our assay results back quickly. Major milestones will be the 43101 report, then we can look to a preliminary economic analysis and a pre-feasibility study. Those would be the major milestones. We're very busy and we're very excited about the results that we're getting in our business so far.
Wonderful. Sean Simmons asks if you can give an estimated timeline on drilling to production to sales on these various projects.
Well, let's focus just on the Alces Lake in terms of the steps are, we mentioned in a previous slide, we'd like to be in production within 3 years. That is our current goal. And I think in terms of getting there, a 43101 report, as I mentioned, pre-feasibility study, a preliminary economic analysis, and those all happening in a timely manner will get us there. It's up to us in terms of our drilling program, but it's also critical shortages, supply chains, that sort of thing. I mean, we've all heard this, how all this is going on, but there are some things outside of our control. That is our goal, 3 years to production.
Okay. Tomas Ramsey is talking about the processing facility being built by a third party. If you can go over the benefits of that, especially how does it save you money or make you more?
Well, that's a great question. And it is actually a benefit to us because it means that we do not have to build our own processing facility. We literally we'll concentrate the monazite on site and then ship it to Saskatoon for processing. It's a distinct advantage to us. One thing I would mention is that monazite has a very, very, very small amount of thorium and uranium in it. And so the Saskatchewan Research Council, who have been dealing and working with uranium and radioactivity for decades, are licensed in Canada to process that. So that's one other thing that we don't have to concern ourselves with. It's a huge advantage to us in terms of timeliness. Their facility is going to be up and running starting next year, and proximity. It's in the same province as our exploration site is.
Frederick, do you have any closing remarks for us?
No, I would just say thank you very much for the opportunity. Our website, you can see at the bottom of our slides here, appiareu.com. Please, everybody, don't hesitate to put your name in to get updates. We are very excited about what we're doing, and our drilling results continue to be very impressive in terms of what we're finding. We are on to something in northern Saskatchewan, and it's very exciting to be potentially one of Canada's next rare earth processing provinces.
Yes, wonderful. It seems like you had a good year, and we wish you a great next quarter. And please join us again with some updates. Great stuff here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay, everyone, stay with us. We've got a quick break, but we'll be right back at the top of the hour. So we'll see you soon.